Hello, and welcome to Faith in an Ever Changing World Encouragement and Hope, and the Faith in Marriage series. I'm Janet Harley, your host, and today it is my pleasure to have with me as my guest David and Erin Jeffreys. Welcome.
Oh,
Hi.
hey, we're so excited to be with you today.
Yes,
Ready
yes.
to
I'm
just
looking forward to this series with couples this month. David is a youth and family pastor. He and Erin both are health coaches and speakers. And when we come back, we will be hearing their faith in marriage story right after this. Welcome back. And David and Erin, if you will please share your faith in marriage story with us.
all right. Well, I think about as even as we look at the name of this in an ever changing world, and I think about how that is so true, even
Mm,
our story. We you set out thinking you have everything planned and thinking that you know how everything's going to go. And you
yeah,
kind of have the script written, and you're just trusting the Lord to fill in the gaps. And
right.
and that really isn't true. It is an ever changing world, and it is also an ever changing story. And sometimes we get ahead of ourselves, or we allow other things to fill in the gaps. Then that was the case for us.
Mm,
We graduated college. Both of us graduated from Christian
Yeah.
school, from Christian high schools, went to Christian college. Both of us graduated from Christian college, stepped right into ministry, and
mm,
we're working full time in ministry, serving students, working in a school, leading the choir. And when we say all of those things, it really sets up for what you would think to be just a perfect love story, family finish.
mhm.
And but life happens, and as life begins to roll, newly married and kids and ministry and all of these things, as life begins to unfold, um,
Yeah.
sometimes it gets tricky.
That's so true. And I think I love the title of your broadcast and this channel that you put on
Thank
because your faith, if it's not grounded and you're not pursuing that on a daily basis,
you. Mhm.
that's where it becomes shaky. And looking back, we can see that now. But in those moments, in those daily pursuits, we weren't
Mm.
doing that. We weren't pursuing our faith. Yeah, on the outside, we were doing all the things. We were ministering to other people. We were, in a church leading, but we
Mm,
weren't pursuing our own faith on a
Mm.
daily basis. And so, like you said, we were raised and we met in college and we were had children but
Mm.
Satan came in, and because we weren't pursuing our faith in that relationship like we should, he came into our marriage and he brought in outside influences that caused me to say, wow, it could be so much better than what I have here. And for me, it wasn't like just, when sin presents itself and it's evident outside, there's so much more going on that has happened even for me. I saw that happen years past. Like I said, looking back now, I can step by step, I can see what Satan was doing. It started for me, and I shared this a couple weeks ago in a conference we were in. It started for me, little bits of bitterness and anger that I started to build up towards David. For
mm,
I know we're on a little bit of a short time here and I could talk for hours about this, but I just began to build up little bits of bitter and anger because I didn't feel like he was fulfilling duties that I expected of him. And so instead of communicating with him as a spouse should do, I just began to hold it in and began to become angry. And this began to build up over a couple of years. I was at home with babies and he was going out in the ministry. And at one point I was doing that with him and we were doing it together. And now I felt like he was going off and here I was at home. Not that I wasn't ministering to my babies, but I felt alone. And I just became bitter and angry. And when that began to build up, then I began to turn into hate, not only against him, but against the ministry and against God. And then when, let's just, you guys can pull up my story. Janet will share the website in a little bit. When this person came in, wow, this looked like the life that I needed because what I had here was not what I thought it was.
Yeah.
And so when Satan presents it, he does make it look all shiny and good, and it did. And for a while, I stepped out in that, and for 7 years, guys, not a while, 7 years, I was out. We separated after a while.
Yeah.
Trying, we separated and divorced, and we decided, mutually, we decided that. I had left him. After David had found out about the affair, I had left, not for the other person, but we just decided after trying for a couple of years, going through counseling and trying.
We really had gone through this cycle,
we did, just kind of back and forth.
Yeah, we would be separated, then we would try, and we'd be separated, and then we would try, and then we'd be separated, we would try, and it really became. Although I think the intentions maybe were right, it became a vicious cycle because at that time our hearts still weren't right,
Yeah.
And so what looked like was helping, really, I think probably was hurting.
Right.
Yeah. And I look back to where this started, and I'm reminded that you can be in all the right places and you can be around all the right people and you can have all of the right appearance and still be not where you need to be spiritually. You can have all the things on the outside that look exactly like they ought to look. We were the last couple that someone would have thought would have had trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, we were just serving and we were smiling and we had the kids and we had a new house and we had all of the things that appearance would say, man, they are doing it right. But what we didn't have was everything that God was looking at on the inside.
Yeah.
And as she was at home becoming bitter and angry and beginning to resent not only me, but the ministry and God, I had no idea. One, we're not very good communicators at the time. We work on that now. We know where we need to become stronger at. And so we're very intentional about that now. But then we were not very good communicators with our thoughts and our feelings. Partly out of, we thought we would protect our spouse by not telling them areas where we were hurting. And in the end, that wasn't the right way to go about it at all. But as she was at home developing all these feelings, I was doing all the right things in ministry, but I wasn't serving my number one ministry. I wasn't serving, I was serving people, but I wasn't serving the people that God had given me to serve first.
Yeah.
And I had lost my priority in that. And she felt like she had lost her position in our home as the wife and the helpmeet, and was now just like second, third, fourth place to everything that was coming in. I was coaching sports. I was leading a school, leading church. And then when I would come home, I was looking and waiting on my family. And it didn't pan out too well. And a lot of that goes back to our lack of communication.
Yeah. Yeah. Communication is key, is it not?
It is.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Oh
Well,
my goodness.
and we withhold so much out of protection, but really, when we withhold those things, it ends up being to our detriment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you end up just going through the motions.
Mhm.
Both of you were for a long time.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we did. And then, all of that happened that we decided to separate, and divorced. And for us, we just made a decision. We thought, okay, well, this is what our life is going to be. And we started to pursue different
Yeah.
directions because we did. Like, we wanted to be
Mhm.
remarried and find another spouse, another mate.
Mhm.
But it just never, for me, it just never felt right. Like, I
Yeah.
just,
Yeah. Yeah.
something wasn't right in my heart. And, I, you know, I, there was a season in my life where I was not pursuing God, probably for about 4 of those years. And when I did start coming back to church, I was invited by a friend, and she just said, "Just come on, just sit with me in church." And that was just an invitation back to God. Because there was a time when I didn't even know if God was real. Just,
Mm.
I was going through this season of disbelief. And so I was invited back to church, and I came, and God began to speak to me. And here he was all along. I was the one who was running. And it was during that time that I said, okay, I want to be married to a godly husband again. Like, it didn't work out the first time, but it can work. Like, I started pursuing that again. And um, like I said, it just wasn't working. And so I really started praying.
Yeah.
And during that season of prayer, David started texting me, and I was like, "Stop texting me, David. Like, I'm praying for
Oh,
him, and I know it's not you. So, like, stop texting me. Like, God, can you have him stop texting?" But lo and behold, it was him, and yeah.
God really was working on our hearts separately.
Mhm.
mm,
And what we found and what we know now is that we both were in a place where we had to really cultivate that relationship with God, and we had to grow
Yeah.
personally before we
Mm.
could ever grow together.
Yeah.
And so God began to take us out of our own hurt and out of our own pain and out of our own bitterness and feelings of rejection and all of those things that we were dealing with in our marriage. Even after 5 or 6 years, you still have all the feels of those things. And so God began to take us and heal our hearts individually
Mm.
and reconcile them back into himself.
Yeah.
And as he began to do that, he began to just quietly kind of reconcile our hearts back to one another. And so as we really realized that that's what was happening, it really became a very scary time. As scary as the conversation of divorce, separation, and divorce, because it's life changing.
Yeah.
This
Mm.
The conversation of restoration was as scary,
Yeah.
if not scarier, because not only was it the projection of a life change, but it also held the opportunity for a second failure where you
Mm.
only failed at the first time.
Wow. Yeah.
But what we knew was that God was calling us to be obedient in that area. After a time of dating and really pursuing one another and long conversations and really bearing our hearts to one another,
Mm-hmm.
we came to a place where we knew that God was calling us back to our marriage and to restoration out of a step of obedience and faith.
Yeah.
We had no idea what we were walking into. We had no idea what the future would hold. We had no idea what our marriage would look like, what our family would look like, or even if it would work. We just knew that that was the decision that God was calling us to make at the time.
There's
That's good.
complete trust.
Yeah.
I remember so many
Yeah.
times he'd say, "Well, I'm going to tell him this. Like, I'm going to tell him everything about me that's changed, and I'm going to scare him off because I just know that this is just not going to work. I'm a totally different person than when he knew me when I was 18 when we met." And he's like, no, I know that God has called us together. And I thought, okay, God, like you're working this out, like you're putting this together, and just walking complete trust, faith. And, the first time I felt like, coming together at 19 years old, getting married at 20, young, I just had those love feelings. And this time it was more, I didn't necessarily have those feelings because it came in with so much hurt, distrust. It was more of, I knew God wanted me to do this. I'm coming in faith and obedience. We're going to have to mend our hearts, because at that moment when we got remarried, they weren't really mended back together.
Yeah.
And he's done that. He's done it. And in fact, this month we married 6 years or 5. He helps me with dates. I like normal.
Back together for 6, married for 5.
Married for 5. Yeah.
All right. Wonderful. Well, it's just wonderful how the Lord works and how he worked on you individually, your individual hearts, to draw you closer and back together. That's wonderful. Now, I know that you have Family Fit Ministries. Can you tell us just briefly about that?
Yeah, Family Fit Ministries is a ministry that God really birthed out of our pain as our marriage was restored, and we knew that God was just really working in our hearts and in our marriage and in our family. We had the burden to really share our pain and God's victory. And as we look at our story, the first time we tried it and it was a complete disaster. But the second time we stepped into it, really wanting God's power and wanting what he had for us. And so in fact, our story on our website is called Wrecked to Restored. And Wrecked started a long time before we actually signed the divorce papers. Wrecked started, way before that. But restoration happened when God began to mend our hearts together. Just at the marriage altar the second time, restoration was when we began to forgive, accept God's forgiveness to us, and begin to accept the forgiveness of one another, and begin really to have that restoration of hearts. So Family Fit Ministries, the word fit there means healthy. And so it is about healthy families, healthy marriages, healthy people, healthy relationships. Our desire is to help create that and to be a resource to those that God would bring in our path for that. So families or couples may come to us for some marriage counseling or marriage coaching, and we can connect them to people that are well versed in those things, or maybe we help them in that. And we're health coaches, so we take on not just the marital or the relational healthiness, but also the physical healthiness, and understanding how God unions those two together, that how our relationship and our marriage is so much stronger, not just because of our spiritual healthiness, but because of our physical healthiness. Our attitudes are better, our tolerance is better, our mind is better. There's so many things that really pour into your relationships and into your marriage. And we try and be kind of a melting pot of all of those things, all things healthy for the family.
Yes, absolutely. And that is one. I will put their website down in the comment section a little bit later. And you have a scripture that is on that site. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. And that's 1 Corinthians 13:4-5. Definitely a good scripture for marriage and for all of us couples. But I thank you so much for being with me today. There is one more thing I'd like for you to say. What is one thing that we can hold on to in this, to hold on to our faith in this ever-changing world?
For me, and it's one thing that I've learned over the years, is that your faith has to be for you, meaning that for years, my faith was based on my husband and my family, and I didn't claim it for myself, meaning that God has a purpose for me.
Right.
He's created me for a purpose. And so my faith has to be based on my God and my faith, and it has to be personal. And so if your faith is not personal with your own God and your purpose, and you know what he has created for you, you can't claim that in this world. And if it's dependent on somebody else, then it's going to falter and it's going to change and it's going to waver. But when you know your God and what he has created for you, and your faith is personal, it's grounded in the one who is never going to change.
Right.
So that's how I claim it.
Yeah.
Right.
I would say, I would use the word hope. And my encouragement to the listeners would be, in this ever-changing world, sometimes we lose hope, in our marriage, as we were walking through difficult days of anger and bitterness and hurt and betrayal and all those things, we just lost hope. We lost hope that there would be a light at the end of the tunnel. We lost hope that there could be better days in our marriage. We lost hope that God was on the backside of it. And so many times we just lose hope. And my encouragement would be just to have hope, to know that there's hope, and that no matter what it may be, whether it's marital or relational issues, or whether it's with a child, or whether it's with a sickness or disease, that there's hope. And,
absolutely. Always hope.
That's right.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your faith and marriage story. And thank you all for watching. And thank you too to Creative Motion Network. Wonderful family. Have faith and look up, friends, where our help comes from. Bye. God bless.